On social media and in my general networking, I've noticed an uptick in people looking for work. And this is where the idea for this series originated. My purpose with this series is to get people more exposure by giving them a platform to share their stories and experiences. I also try to provide motivation to others, kind of let people know they're not alone. And then hopefully we can pick up some new job search or career management ideas as we create a community for people that are in the job search mode. Today, I'm with Mike Thornton. Mike is a self described heart centered leader who is unafraid to be authentic, transparent, and bold. And I got that directly from his LinkedIn profile. Mike is also a lawyer turned customer service expert. So those are my terms, and we'll have to ask Mike if he is a customer service expert. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, can you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are?
You kind of touched on the law thing. I actually went to law school, practiced law for a few years, decided that was actually not going to be where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. So I exited from law. Had a friend who was involved in a customer service environment, invited me in. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I fell in love with it. Since then, I have spent a lot of time working to learn about what makes customers tick, things that make customers believe in a what's a good experience and what isn't a good experience. If you ask anybody, what's a horrible customer service experience, they can probably give you about 1,000 examples. Some brutal, some not so brutal. But then I also kind of translated that into client services, uh, and taking that same understanding of what drives a really positive experience into the client world. So I really like customer service. I'm one of the weird people who thinks it's fun, uh, because you get to resolve things and you get to fix problems. And when you go home at the end of the day, you can say, hey, I did some really good things today. A lot of times in jobs, it just seems like it's never ending, and you never really get a sense of accomplishment. I think in a service environment, you do, which is why I like it. So I live in just outside Fort Worth, grew up in Oklahoma, went to school down in Baylor in Waco. It just kind of kept coming back to Texas off and on, and landed here to our house here almost, well, actually over 9 years ago now. It's a good place, and it's a good environment.
And for the record, your current job status is what?
My current job status is I am happy to announce that I accepted a job, and I will be starting a new role on October 6th. I was laid off on May 1st of 2025, almost 6 years to the date. I'll be starting a new job, which is I'm really excited. It's kind of put a different spin on things. I'm now looking back at the experience, I think with a little different lens. A lot of it's still the same, but the pending fear of doom has kind of is kind of gone. And one of the things that I have done a lot in my experiences is learned about emotions and feelings. Feelings aren't bad, feelings just are. And I think a lot of people who are in that unemployed space are wrestling with a lot of really strong emotions. And it's one of the things I've noticed, one of the things I like to help talk to people about, because one of the keys to having a good productive life is to managing those emotions and trying to keep the negative ones away, which can't always do, right? They'll be there, but hopefully we all find ways to move beyond the negative emotions and move in. But in the job environment, you see on LinkedIn daily, there are posts of people who are about to lose everything, and that's scary to me. I was there. I was thinking, like, are we going to lose everything? We weren't right. We weren't on the edge yet, but I see people who are. And to me, that is the worst thing I can imagine, is having built a life and having it all ripped away. We've heard most of our lives, I think, people are like one or two paychecks away from being homeless. And I think we're seeing that nowadays. There are some people in dire straits. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the solution is. But it is a scary environment out there, and I think to minimize that is not doing people a good service. We need to be honest with people and say it's okay to feel that way. Let's see what we can do about it.
And that comes back to the sense of community and letting people know
Yep,
they're not alone. And it's important because
exactly.
it's easy to sit behind the screen and think everybody's unemployed. Not everybody's unemployed. People are still getting jobs. Proof in point.
It's happening. I didn't realize this from my past, but apparently September and October really kind of are big hiring months as companies try to spend out their budget because they don't want to lose the budget come first of the year. So they're trying to hire people, which is good news. It's still really, I think it's still really brutal. I'm not sure there are enough jobs for people to employ everyone, but it's out there, and we're, hopefully people will be able to start landing things, even if it's maybe a step down in their career, step down financially. You take a job, you make it work, and you figure out what you're going to do next.
Now you have the experience of 6 months of job search. Do you think the job market is more challenging today than it has been?
Yes, without a doubt, without a doubt. The data right now is telling us that this year alone, 800,000 people have been laid off, over 800,000 people. And those numbers have been revised up and up some. But that's a lot of people to be pushed out into the market. The economy is not as maybe robust as we like. So I think a lot of companies are pulling back. You have technology advances, which make some jobs not as needed in an environment. So they may be able to get by with two people instead of five people. But I think, my experience is that you send a lot of resumes out, you don't hear much. You really don't hear much back at all, one way or the other. I think it's frustrating for people, and it's scary because you look at someone saying like, I have a lot of experience. I've done a good job. I'm now without a job, and it seems like I'm being viewed as damaged goods, that there's something wrong with me. That's a sentiment I think you hear a lot with people who have had their jobs eliminated, through no fault of their own. That people look at their resume and the first thing they say is, "Oh, I see that you haven't worked in 5 months. What's going on?" Well, I was laid off. It's like, it's like, well, and while people are very understanding of that, you see it in people's eyes. It's like, what's wrong with you? Why did they lay you off and not somebody else? It's a challenging world out there, and it's a challenging market. I think anybody who says otherwise probably either is employed and not paying attention, or is not really tapping into what people are saying. I don't think in my years on LinkedIn that I have seen as many people desperate for a job as I have seen this year. It is like all day long, every day. That's really what you see, is people who are just desperate to find work. And the mythology that people don't want to work is kind of being blown out of the water to me, because people want to work. They really do. And finding someone who will give you the chance isn't as easy as it might have been.
You kind of alluded to it a little bit about ghosting.
Hmm.
You have opinions on ghosting? Did you experience anything like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't, if I send in a resume to a job and they never respond to me, I don't consider that ghosting. I consider that I consider that bad manners. Um, you know, Grandma probably would have, said something to him, because Grandma always believed in good manners. I think it is unfortunate that that happens. I think companies are doing people a disservice and are not being mindful of the fact that people who apply for jobs can be customers, or might be a decision maker in the future. But I don't consider that ghosting, right? I just think it's kind of mean. Ghosting to me is I've applied, someone has talked to me, either at an initial recruiting screen or something like that, and then I never hear from them again. and I reach out and I don't hear from them. I reach out and I'm ignored. To me, that's ghosting. I don't understand it, to be very honest. I don't really get why an organization who has spent time talking to someone won't give them some kind of closure. um, because you sit and worry, you sit and think like, do they think I'm stupid, or was it just not a fit, or did they have an internal candidate they were scoping all along and we're just testing the waters? What's going on? But I don't think it hurts anybody to at least give people a little bit of feedback and closing. I also think that it is also incumbent upon the hiring folks to give people a little bit of robust feedback in this world. Just to say like, we went with somebody else. Well, okay, why not me? What could I have done better? Is there something I need to improve upon in order to be able to bust the job market open? And so I think people are kind of limping along without any feedback. And you begin to fill in the blanks, going back to that emotions thing. You begin to fill in the blanks with things that may or may not be true. Had one interview, and I talked to someone in the senior leadership, and he literally yawned the entire interview, which I thought was, I mean, if I had done that as a candidate, they would have bounced me out in 4 seconds, right? And I'm like going, am I boring you? Did you not sleep last night? What's going on? And had he acknowledged it and said like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm yawning. It's been a really long day. I'm really tired. It's like, okay, I get it, no problem. But he never acknowledged it, and I never heard back from him again. I'm assuming he didn't think I was a really great candidate for them, which is okay. I'm cool with that. But it left a pretty bitter taste in my mouth of someone who is that disrespectful to someone. And I wonder if that person is equally as disrespectful to the employees as they are to the candidates.
Yeah.
That's
So
where
you're,
my customer service mind goes. Is that if you're behaving this way one place, you're going to behave that way someplace else. Uh, so so it's probably me dodging a bullet, which is good. I'm drinking Dr. Pepper, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. If this is not Jack and Coke, this is actually a Diet Dr. Pepper.
and out of the great state of Texas. Isn't that where Dr. Pepper originated?
It is actually down in Waco, Texas.
Mhm.
Um, So the Dr. Pepper Hall of Fame is actually in Waco. If you're ever down in Waco, go see it. It's a fun place. At Baylor, we learned to drink Dr. Pepper. That was our drink. It was everywhere.
Well, that was bonus coverage. That was not in our notes. For the audience.
Hopefully, you'll get some money from Dr. Pepper for that.
So what were some of the things you did? Well, one, what is job search a full-time job? And then two, like give us an idea of the day in the life of Mike back when you were searching.
I think it is a full-time job because it is always on your mind. If you are looking for a job, and I think people who are looking for one will probably go, yeah, that's right. You think about it pretty much all the time. You may not be at your keyboard applying or interviewing or writing resumes or something, or redoing resumes, but you eat dinner and you think about it. You're at the store and you think, can we afford that? Should I not buy that? In the middle, 3 o'clock in the morning is the worst time in the world. It's quiet, it's dark, everything is still, and your mind goes bong. And you start worrying, and you start spiraling, and talking yourself into the fact, saying like, I'm going to be in a box by the river before too long. And a panic sets in. So even if you're not doing it full time, to me, it is a full time job because it's always on your mind. You go on vacation, and it's on your mind. It's just there. When I was out looking for a job, I'm in kind of an early morning person, so I'd get up early, exercise if I could. I wasn't probably as good at it as I should have been. Had I known that in 6 months I was going to get a job, I probably would have handled everything a little differently. But wouldn't we all? But exercise a little bit, clean up, do dishes, some things like that, a few household chores, and then sit down in the computer. The dog's hanging out there, it's asleep right now around me. They tended to do that anyway. And and fire up looking at job boards. In my experience, I found that the bites I got were because I got in very early in the application process. I got to a company either like usually the day they posted the job, or at the very least the day after the second day they posted the job. Why? Because once you go and you look at a post and you start to say, hey, I'm going to apply for that job, and then you see like 400 people have applied for this job. It's like, well, what's the point? My resume is now buried in 400 resumes. I don't know that it's going to come up. If I can be one of the first few they look at, I think I'm in better shape. That was my personal preference. I think some people do it different ways. I'd apply, find jobs, apply to them. I never really had much success retweaking my resume. It didn't seem to help any. Cover letters never seemed to help any. Um, like I said, I don't know a lot that seemed to help. And we can get into other, the magic, the A word, as we know it now. We can talk about that at some point. But for me, it was, trying to find leads, trying to find people I know in environments and talk to them. I had some wonderful support people. A former boss of mine, a guy named Mark, was phenomenal. First of all, I think he was the best boss I ever had. Loved the guy, but he reached out to me, offered his support, let me know he would do anything for me, and he would send me jobs as he saw them. So it wasn't a one-time thing. He actually stayed really close to it, and so big thank you to him just for the support. There's some people along the way that I think I really valued. I think also along the way, um, I'm straying a little bit from the day in the life, but along the way, back into the emotions of it is there's a profound sense of loneliness when you're sitting at your keyboard every day, all day long, trying to find a job. And you're only, you maybe have a spouse or kids in the house. Um, you may have TV on or a radio or music on, but it's a very lonely experience and it's a very lonely time. And you're wrestling with the emotions of feeling like a failure, feeling like you're letting people down, panicking, wondering why people aren't talking to, not even, why is the employer not talking to me, but why are the people who I used to work with, why have they just cut me off completely? And so, my days were spent kind of in that space, wrestling with the loneliness, um, finding things to do. So, by the afternoon, the early afternoon, I was probably either reading. I like to read a lot, so I would have a backlog of books. A lot. I have 4 or 5 books going at the same time. Whether it is a escapist novel just to let my mind wander, or a book about a topic I've always wondered. I was a history major school, so I read a lot of history. So I would read some, and then by the evening, we're having dinner and things like that. But the job search was excruciating and it was painful, because you feel like you're throwing rocks at a huge massive brick wall, and then you feel like you're beating your head against that. And so I think people need to recognize those emotions and wrestle with them and deal with them and see what they can do about it. I certainly did, because I slid probably 2 months in. I began to slide into a pretty dark place, and had to pull myself out, with the help of some folks, because it's just I have described job searching to many people as an exercise in daily humiliation. And that's what it is. I ask people to talk to me because I'm experienced, and they don't even give me the time of day. That's humiliating. That is really humiliating. And when it happens, you know, literally hundreds of times, it gets to you and it wears on you. And I think you wonder what the long term impact is. I don't know. I guess we'll probably all see in the next few years. What's that long-term impact to a person's, self worth over time? And does it, I don't think getting a new job makes that impact go away. I think it helps. It helps stop it. Kind of put your finger in the dike for a while. But there's still a pretty large backlog of things that you have to work through and wrestle with in order to get to a point where you're happy, healthy, and fully functioning again.
Well,
Boy, that sounded bleak, didn't
you talk about
it?
it's a mental exercise. I mean, I
It
think
is.
what I'm
It is.
seeing is people are going through it, whether or not they admit it. But you mentioned in our pre-call, one of the hardest parts of job search is rejection, and then
Oh
you're
yeah.
pretty much facing rejection
Oh
every
yeah. Every moment of every day. Yeah.
How did you handle that, and how did you keep moving forward?
I probably did not handle it in the most psychologically healthy way. I stuffed it. I just stuffed it down. Um, you know, um, I would sometimes reckon with it in the middle of the night, the 3 o'clock a.m., mind bong, as I talk about it. I think that's where I really felt the impact of just constantly being rejected. And being rejected without, I think one of the really hard things is being rejected without understanding why. Viktor Frankl, really great. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a Jewish man in Nazi Germany. He was taken to Dachau concentration camp. He survived, and on the backside of it, he kind of formed a branch of psychology called logotherapy. And one of the things he championed came out of like the beliefs of Nietzsche was a man can endure pretty much any how if they understand why. And when you're getting rejected all day long, every day, either by not hearing anything at all. So someone says like, I don't even think you're worth sending a note to say like, no, I'm just going to ignore you, right? Versus people who talk to you and then ignore you, versus people who like just say, hey, I don't think this is a fit after some more. I had one really great call with a guy who 10 minutes in the call goes, I don't think this is a fit. I know here's what I need, and while you have great experience, it's not really in this wheelhouse. But he was honest, and I was like going, thank you for being honest, thank you for talking to me, thank you for being honest, and I walked away feeling pretty good about that encounter. It's when you don't understand why, or when you have to beg for the why. One of the things I noticed is, companies have the applicant tracking systems, which is okay. Within those are the automated emails, which is why I don't understand why they can't send out a rejection, because they all have the automated system. All you do is go press a button and it kicks out emails. But one of the things that in that ATS is it's a very generic email. We think you're great, we love you, but we're going to go with someone else, or the position's already filled, or whatever that tag, their drop down menu, position's already filled, internal candidate, you're not a right fit, or something like that. But if I've talked to you, it'd be nice to hear a little more context, and a little more information about, hey, here's, have you thought about going in this direction or something like that? I know recruiters are busy. Most companies have contracted their recruiter staff in the belief that AI is going to help them get things done. Haha. And so recruiters are, and you hear from recruiters, I'm having to review like hundreds of resumes a day. I don't really have time to give people feedback. Well, that's something that you and your company need to wrestle with. You got to figure that out, because that is, like, going back to what I said earlier, it's demeaning to people. And so when for rejection for me, there were times I was like going like, well, and just moved on. But there were times it really stung, because it was something I was like going like, I'm good. I'm a fit for this job. Why do you guys not see it? And you can't find anybody who will tell you why do you think I'm not a fit for this? Did you not get to my resume? Is it that there's another internal candidate, or what's going on? So yeah, rejection is one of those things. anybody searching for a job is going to have to figure out how to deal with. Uh, and you know, and if you, I think I will put a plug in here. If you find yourself beginning to go down that dark spiral, find help. Either find a really good friend to talk to. Um, um, so Viktor Frankl was also famous for saying that, you know, if a person has friends, they never need a therapist. Um, which I have always hung on to. That, you know, find somebody to talk to who will let you talk and not try to fix it for you, not try to, you know, who will say like, are you wanting me to help, or you just want me to listen? I just want you to listen. Awesome, bring it on. Let me have it. You know, get out that box of wine and you know, shed some tears and work through it. But don't do like I did in the middle of the summer and stuff it down, because that is not healthy at all.